I get into the rock and roll period in the mid-60s, I'm going to sum up. Well, first of all, I have to tune. This is one thing that we learned back in the village in the early 60s, was to tune our guitars. And when we couldn't tune our guitars on a humid night or something, where our guitars were just being obstinate, we would tell stupid stories like here's a folk song by Tuning, Chinese folk song. I can't believe I almost forgot that. Anyway, so like I said, I was the kid with the guitar, with the car, with my parents' car, and I would get a call from. This is before the jug band again. I'm sorry, and I would get a call. From Van Ronk every now and then, and he would say, "Can you get your parents' car?" And I would say, "Okay." So I would pick him up. And it was usually him or with Phil Oakes and Dylan. There was one night when Dylan and Phil Oakes were, the three of them wanted to hang out at record companies. And I would pick them up, and then we'd go down to the village. And we'd go to the Gaslight, and everybody would be jamming, and it was, I remember Sebastian and Dylan doing Mr. Tambourine Man the first time that I think anybody heard it. And then that third storefront on McDougal Street was on the street level, right next to the Folklore Center and the Gaslight Cafe. It was called the Kettle of Fish. And it was the bar that, it was like the sort of like the folk music version of the White Horse Tavern. The White Horse Tavern was a few blocks away, and it was where most of the, especially the Irish literary people would drink. Brendan Behan, Dylan Thomas, people have said that they drank themselves to death out of the White Horse Tavern. Synthesizer. Anyway, so I would get a call and pick those guys up. We would go down to the Gaslight and then to the Kettle of Fish. And I would sit there and listen to these guys talk about gigs and stuff like that. I didn't know anything about gigs, you know, I was still in school. And Dylan would talk about how he was invited down to a Southern college and he couldn't believe it because of his songs. And Dave would sit there just wishing he was Bob Dylan. And it was, for me it was, anyway, some years later, I wrote a song about that. Because I wanted to, just like a folk song about what it was for a kid, you know, my age and everything, just to hang out with these guys. So this is called The Kettle of Fish. I changed some of the names, I don't know why. But if you want to know who they are, you could, as you buy my book on the way out, you're welcome to ask me whatever questions you want. And I did write a book. The reason I wrote a book was to have an index, so I can carry my book around, and if anybody asks, you know, as I'm losing my memory, you know, I recommend everybody write a book just to have an index so they know what happened in their life. You know. Or put it on your iPhone. You know.